So tonight we are kind of winging it. Holly, Bob, Holly trusted us to come up here and lead worship this morning. It's literally 6 p.m. This evening. And I will speak for myself when I say today has been, I just don't really feel great today, and I know some of us also feel that way. So, I think you should. So just bear with us while we're up here, and yeah, we're gonna do a few songs, and then Holly is giving tonight's message, and it's gonna be great. It's about loving the earth, because a few days ago it was Earth Day, so that's pretty cool. I'm gonna say a quick word of prayer, and then we will go. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all of the people in this building and all of the people watching at home. I just pray that the beautiful weather that you're bringing will fill our hearts and minds with happiness and not allergies. And I pray that tonight's message will speak to everybody, and that we can love and steward the earth that you gave us. As a bold declaration of our faith. In your name, amen. You're the resurrection that we've waited for. You buried the night and came with the morning. You're the King of heaven, the praise is yours. The longer the quiet, the louder the chorus. We will sing a new song, 'cause death is dead and gone with the winter. We will sing a new song, let hallelujahs flow like a river. We're coming back to life, reaching towards the light. Your love is like springtime. You're the living water, God, we thirst for you. The dry and the barren will flower and bloom. You're the sun that's shining, you restore my soul. The deeper you call us, oh, the deeper we'll go. We will sing a new song, 'cause death is dead and gone with the winter. We will sing a new song, let hallelujahs flow like a river. We're coming back to life, reaching towards the light. Your love is like springtime. Come tend the soil, come tend the soil of my soul, and like a garden I will grow. I will grow. We will sing a new song, 'cause death is dead and gone with the winter. We will sing a new song, let hallelujah We're coming back to life, reaching toward the light. Your love is like springtime. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Okay, now we've got a video that we're gonna watch really fast before Holly comes up here. So yeah.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes what planet looked like an Earth-wise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, a first chance to see a shared reality, a declared stance, and a commonality, a glimpse into our planet's mirror. And as threats drew nearer, our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training and sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not, just as we chose to go to the moon. We know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn, we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star. And as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight, right in all of us. Trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is our hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
Hello, everybody. That was really loud. Oh, my heart. I heard that poem last year, and it is one of my favorite ones that I've heard a spoken word and artistic piece on just our responsibility to love the earth. And so I don't feel like I have to preach a message, but I still will. So I'm going to start with the fact that I'm just insanely nervous today. I've been like an emotional wreck. And part of that comes from my heart for this world is just so big and it's heavy, and there's a huge burden on our responsibility to care. And so my hope today is that this isn't a cliche Earth Day message because Earth Day was yesterday, but that this is maybe a chance to just empower some perspective, a chance to just motivate us and unify us. That's my favorite thing about loving the earth, is it's one of the few things in this world that can truly unify us across age, across race, across socioeconomic status, across language barrier and culture barrier. The compassion that we can have for our planet is truly one of the most unifying things about us. When we first sat down, Sharita and Christy and I, to talk about messages this year, it was not hard to pick a psalm that talks about the earth, because David, if you've had a chance to dive into the Psalms, had an awe of nature. And so I'm going to start with reading the psalm that I picked for this message today, Psalm 65. And I invite you to either read along on the screens as it's up there, or just close your eyes and listen to it. I think that's one of my favorite ways to experience scripture as I'm in a season of deconstructing, is sometimes just listening to it and hearing it differently. Psalm 65. What mighty praise, O God! belongs to you in Zion. We will fulfill our vows to you, for you answer our prayers. All of us must come to you. Though we are overwhelmed by our sins, you forgive them all. What joy for those you choose to bring near, those who live in your holy courts. What festivities await us inside your holy temple. You faithfully answer our prayers with awesome deeds, O God, our Savior. You are the hope of everyone on earth, even those who sail on distant seas. You formed the mountains by your power and armed yourself with mighty strength. You quieted raging oceans and their pounding waves and silenced the shouting of the nations. Those who live at the ends of the earth stand in awe of your wonders. From where the sun rises to where it sets, you inspire shouts of joy. You take care of the earth and water it, making it rich and fertile. The river of God has plenty of water. It provides a bountiful harvest of grain, for you have ordered it so. You drench the plowed ground with rain, melting the clods and leveling the ridges. You soften the earth with showers and bless its abundant crops. You crown a year with a bountiful harvest, and even the hard pathways overflow with abundance. The grasslands of the wilderness become a lush pasture, and the hillsides blossom with joy. The meadows are clothed with flocks of sheep, and the valleys are carpeted with grain. They all shout and sing for joy. I don't know about you, but I can totally see a picture of this beautiful poetry that David is writing. So it's obvious. I kind of get the reputation around here for being kind of the nerdy, earth-loving hippie that's always barefoot. And that would definitely fit, and I own that title proudly. And I just wanted to share a little bit about why the earth is so meaningful to me, and specifically nature. Personally, for me, it's been a place where I have found the most amount of healing. It's been a place of just escape, a place where I find a lot of freedom from my anxiety. I know most of you can tell, like, I'm a very seasonal creature, and so when it comes to the winter, I just want to hibernate and hide and cry and feel in all my feels, and so I always get that real depressive thing in the winter. And this winter, I have taken up the art of caring for plants in my house. And so this is Neville. Everybody say hello. I brought him from home. I really enjoyed a season of learning to grow things, learning to nurture things with my hands. And that's been something that has been very profound in my world. And so I invite you that even if you tell me you don't have a green thumb, like, we can help you find a plant that will be forgiving. But this isn't just a message from an earth-loving hippie. I believe that loving the earth and caring for our earth is actually a justice issue. And part of that comes from the fact that our neglect or our care for the earth is truly one of our greatest legacies. When we neglect the earth, people suffer. Generations suffer. It is as crucial to care for our planet as it is to care for people. And it's something that we were trusted with. So I'm going to be super honest, and I've been very honest while I've been up here on these spaces and when I lead worship. I have been in a very long season and a hard season of deconstructing a lot of my faith background and trying to figure out what the Bible means to me and who God really is. And in these spaces, there's places when I don't feel very qualified to be up here, and I realize in some ways that makes me maybe more qualified because we are surrounded by a culture that kind of spits out what we've been taught, and I think it's really important to challenge those spaces. So in the heart of deconstructing, as I dove into figuring out what I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to challenge everyone that for me, as I look at the Bible, to be honest, there's a lot that I don't understand. There's a lot that I don't like, and I'm wrestling with that. There's a lot that I love, and I hang on to those things. And there's a lot of pieces that are just kind of in this place right now of like, okay, God, you gotta help me explain this. But there are consistencies in the Bible, and anytime I feel these waves of doubt and questions, I go back to those consistencies, those pieces that from cover to cover, every book of the Bible, they stay true. And so I want to share 3 of those 2 with you today. And those 3 are things that really just surround this whole message, this whole Earth Love message, and this really beautiful piece. So the first is God created. God created the earth. I actually called Christy this week and was like, help me deconstruct and like be all nerdy, because there's a lot of questions when we read the creation story. If you have familiarity with it, literally the Bible starts with this whole beautiful story of creation, how God created. And it's divided up into 6 days of creation, and on the 7th day, God rested. And there's a lot of theologians that question whether it took 7 days or whether those were thousands of years. There's a lot of scientists that say, but we have this whole theory of evolution, and we have this stuff, and like there is so much good stuff out there. And I welcome it all, because it's amazing to me to see the creativity and the intelligence of people that can pursue leads and try to explain answers that the Bible's not very clear about. And sometimes I think God did that on purpose a little bit. But what we do know to be certain is that God created. I love the story of creation because to me, it shows God's wild creativity and intention. And this was probably a story that David heard over and over and over again. My guess is that it was passed down audibly by his family members, by generations that talked about, because that's how we got the Bible. It was passed down until it was written down, and then it was written over and over and over again. And so this story was something maybe he went to bed with, and his mom or his dad or someone told him. Maybe his brothers, we know he had a lot of brothers, maybe they would kind of reiterate the story. And I'm sure that it got twisted, and it was funny at times, and it was beautiful at times. But here's something I also want to challenge you with. When we look back at this specific psalm that David's talking about, he talks about things like the mighty mountains. He talks about green rolling meadows. He talks about the raging seas. And take a second, and in our modern privileged world, we get to see the world for what it is. We get to see pictures of it from outer space. We can see videos. We don't have to visit these places to be exposed to the wildness that is creation. We don't have to dive to the bottom of the sea. There's other people that have done that for us, and now there's machines that do that for us. We also have the ability to travel a lot further than they ever did in David's age. Like, we can get on an airplane and we can be somewhere in a couple hours that would have taken them like hundreds of days to travel. So when we look at this really cool, very beautiful, profound awe that David had in nature, I want to put a couple pictures on the screen, and I want to expose you to what David's world may have looked like. This is an image of the very desert-like valleys that is often talked about. The next one. This is a picture I found of the Jordan River. There's lots. Jordan River is very, very long, and we know Christy actually helped me pull up a map and kind of scope out David's travels, and there's a time when he's on one side of the river, and there's a time on when he's on the other, so we assume he maybe crossed the Jordan River. What we know about the Jordan River from almost all the pictures, it was really green around the pretty river itself, but then there's a lot of desert on the other sides of that. Do the next picture. These are the mountains that David talks about. I think they're really pretty, but they're not Mount Everest. They're not Pikes Peak, where I came from. Next picture. This is just a really cool tree. These trees are fantastic. Like, I want to hug that tree, but still, trees in the Middle East in a desert tend to be short because they have to be closer to the ground. They have to be closer to the water sources. David had no idea about the redwoods in California, how they tower like skyscrapers in the sky. Next photo. This is kind of a model of what Jerusalem looked like. And I imagine that when David lived inside of the city, like when Scott and I talk about moving someday, like I want big trees in my house, like in my yard. I want lots of gardens and green. And they literally lived in cities that were completely surrounded with dirt. Next photo. And this is the Sea of Galilee. So when he talks about quieting the raging seas, I asked Christy, I was like, do you think he ever even made it to the Mediterranean Sea, which would have been the only large body of water, ocean-like body of water that he could have been near? And in what we can tell, David never makes it to the Mediterranean Sea. He may have, but from the documented journeys, we don't see him actually getting to go to the coast. What he saw was this body of water where you can literally look to the other side. And I'm not going to minimize it because hundreds of thousands of people probably died crossing that. It's a very large body of water. And in the storms, it has 10-foot waves that hit shore in the middle of the sea. That was enough to capsize boats. But still, from our perspective, this is not a Pacific Ocean. And so I wanted to share that briefly, to just share the scope. Was there one more picture? No. The scope of what David's perspective was. He lived in the desert. He hid in the desert. We know that he was pursued by people during seasons of his life. And I don't know about you, but I'd imagine that being in the desert was sometimes exhausting and frustrating. I'd imagine that there were times when that was not a beautiful thing, that he was looking out on the scope of land. I'd imagine he was hoping that there would be people, hoping that there would be water, hoping that there would be a tree to bring him shade. Yet this man, in song after song after song, talks about the awe of God. And I just marvel at that, because I realize how much more I have to marvel, yet the writer of most of the Psalms did so, and pretty much most of the Psalms he wrote. He had an immense amount of respect for nature, and he also did it. And one more perspective piece of that is that in this time, people were so dependent on the land and dependent upon the weather being good, because they didn't have the option to go to the grocery store. They didn't have the option to call up China and have things brought over. There was trade, but it was done within the scope of those things had to be prearranged, and we had to rely on the fact that that other land had a good year that year. And so there was often times where people starved and they suffered because they were so dependent upon the land. They were so dependent upon the weather. There were times trade ships would come across the seas and they would capsize, and nobody would see that ship, though they were expecting that ship full of goods and survival items. And so there was this dependence that turned into just deep reverence over the power of nature. Yet David recognized that God was the creator, and God was the one who was the power, that he could quiet the raging seas thousands of years before Jesus came to quiet the seas. How cool is that? Those are those places of consistency. I also want to take a second and jump into our present moment. And yes, we get to see a lot of cool things about the world, but it's been thousands of years where we have tried to go into outer space. We've tried to send submarines down to the bottom of oceans. We've tried to hit every island in the Pacific Ocean, yet there is still so much unknown about our world. How cool is God that when he created the first atoms on Earth, that when he created the first plants and the first animals, how incredible is it that we still haven't figured it all out yet? That what took him, and if we believe it's actual days, what took him 6 days has taken us thousands of years, and we still don't know enough. I love nature. I love nature for a lot of reasons. I think it's beautiful. I think that it's healing. I think that there is so much about nature, and there's a lot of theology that studies. Christy shared with me a theology called eco-theology that literally it dives into nature and theology and how we can all experience God through nature. And that's something that's also consistent in the Bible. But I would go further and say, I also really like nature because nature exists in relationship. So there is an interdependence in relationship. Trees and plants, they take in the air and they turn it into what they need to survive. And then they breathe out the air, literally breathe it out. Little Neville is breathing out air right now. And that air is oxygen that we then take in and we breathe. And then our bodies do with it what we need to survive, and then we breathe out carbon dioxide. And that's what Neville needs. How cool is that? He and I depend on each other. God knew what he was doing. A lot of animals depend, and we are some of those animals. We depend on this earth to provide shelter. We depend on the trees. We depend on the rocks. We require that to be able to stay, to shelter from the storms. Lots of animals depend on it to hide from predators. They need the giant leaves, and they need the ability to hide inside of trees. That just rhymed. Trees, this is also something I've shared on stage before, but it's because I think it's really cool. Trees need each other. Trees don't, if you see a tree growing completely by itself, that tree was probably planted by a human being. Trees actually grow, and they may have some distance. Some of them are a little bit more like introverted trees, and some of them like to be really social. But trees require one another to exist. Their root structures actually underground take care of one another. They feed each other nutrients. In fact, trees are so dang smart, they can tell the difference between the roots of a species tree like them and another plant that's not like their species, yet they still often help each other out unless it's one of the species that's gonna hurt them, and then they can strangle that little guy out. Like, they're so smart, it's so cool. And even, there's a really cool study where even in the most densest of forests, the tiny baby trees, while the big trees have all grown with giant branches and they cover, if you've ever been in a forest where it's dark because there's so many leaves and branches, baby trees can still get sunlight because the big trees through their roots deliver it. Like, how beautiful is that? They nurture their little tiny babies to grow up until they're big enough to reach sunlight on their own. And I'm sure those little trees grow up someday and they're like, that's what sunlight feels like. Like, cool. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Wildflowers are another one of those. One of the reasons they're so strong is that they grow in packs, like literally, and like they like each other. There's lots of times the biggest beautiful wildflower gardens, they have so many different species and they all kind of take care of each other. And they're often what we don't like to have because they grow wherever, literally. They grow in parking lots. Like, these things are sturdy, but you never see a single flower by itself. If you want to go really big in the relationship world, you have this big, beautiful moon that orbits around our Earth. And when it orbits, it pulls our ocean waves, and our waves are necessary. It keeps the water moving. It keeps the water expanding around our Earth, and it keeps all the animals inside of it getting the right amount of oxygen. And we depend on our Earth because everything does, because when the Earth rotates, which rotates around the sun, we get seasons. And so people like me who don't like winter, we're really grateful we rotate on an axis that gets us spring and summer, right? And the last one I'm going to mention about relationship is sunlight, because I am a dork and I love sunlight, and I tell everybody that. But literally, it keeps us healthy. The sun gives us vitamin D, and we need vitamin D. It also just makes us really happy. So there is a lot in this world that is built around relationship. So relationship is the second consistent. Hi, Monty. Do you want to come up here with me? God is relational. And that we can see from this very beginning of creation. When God created, he created a whole world that depended on one another. And then God looked at this beautiful world, this marvelous world that was perfect. And yet God still said it was not good enough. Hi, Monty. And so God created human beings. And God's purpose when he created Adam and then he created Eve was to be in relationship with human beings. And also that second part of that, our call to care for the earth, is that God trusted humans to then be the ones to caretake this planet. God literally gave Adam the call to start to name the animals. Like, this is such a profound responsibility, and God trusted like little naked people to do the job. That's a big deal. And the cool thing is God has never gone back on that responsibility. No matter how much Adam and Eve screwed that up for us all, God still asks us to care for our planet. Now, whenever we mention Adam and Eve, I always think that it's really important to have a brief conversation, and I'm not going to say a lot about the gender conversation because I have a lot to say, and this isn't the space for it. But I think it's really important to acknowledge first and foremost that God created a man and he created a woman. And there's a lot of faith and religious trauma that has centered around this verse, that has specifically said, this is what humanity is supposed to look like. Because I don't know about you, but when I was a kid growing up in school and I looked at my Bible, Adam and Eve were usually white, and usually Eve had red hair, which I thought was fantastic. But when we get to look at humanity, they were probably really short, had brown skin and probably dark hair because that's the culture of, and that's what humans in that part of the world with the desert-like temperatures, like they needed skin that protected them from the sun. This skin doesn't last very long in the sunlight without, so I can guarantee you Eve was not pale and redheaded. But I also think it's important to acknowledge TCG is a very affirming community, and I struggle so much with how much those verses have gone to hurt people who do not fall into those two specific populations of people, because heck, God's creation of humanity is one of the most creative things that we can see in this world. It's the most creative reflections of God's creativity, because out of two little brown people came black skin, came white skin, came the olive colored skin that many Asian people have. It came people who are short, people who are tall. We get neurodivergent, atypical, like neurotypical people, and my words are together because I'm so excited. Like, how cool is God? Like, you and I came from the same two people. Whoa! That to me is the most incredible reflection of God's creativity. And dear people who stop like trying to force people to fit into those two boxes, like, dang it, not very many of us fit into those two boxes. So I love that God created two humans to be in relationship with one another, and those two people, though they may have made some mistakes, like I'm hands up there, have been one to make lots and lots of mistakes. They are the reason that there is so much creativity in the humankind in this world. And they did their part to care for the world. They were put into one of those beautiful images that Eden, the Garden of Eden. Sharita preached a beautiful message on gardens last year. I think it was your Earth Day message, wasn't it? And then they were cast out of the garden, and yet you see them caring for the fields. You see them using animals, but in a respectful way. Like, they did their part to care for the world, even after so much had changed. We should marvel at the creativity in one another as much as we marvel at the world. Caring for the earth unifies us. While Adam and Eve were caring for their little tiny piece of land, I want to jump into that last consistency, and that is that word care. From cover to cover, I know that there's a lot of things in the Bible that say, God said to do this, God said don't do this, and most of the time, the person saying God said is a human who is sharing what his or her experience of. There's a lot of gospels that are not included in the Bible that you can go and read, a lot of scrolls. And there are some females that wrote, which is really cool to me. I love reading those perspectives because it just gives us that cultural and context perspective of the world that the Bible was written in. But a lot of the time when I see things that people often use as ammunition to hurt other people, things that belittle women because of their gender, that hurt people because of their race or their sexuality, those are not consistent things across Scripture. What we see consistently is that God loves and He cares. God cares for people. God cares for the earth. God cares for this planet. So much so that what we see consistently is that we are asked to love God, to love others, and to love our planet. And that is the heart of who God is. No matter how much deconstructing I do, how much things I read and stories that are thrown at me, who I know God to be, it's changed a lot over the years. God isn't really a he to me anymore. I still slip up and say he because it's been ingrained in me, and God isn't judgmental and not sitting there trying to yell at me because of the clothes I'm wearing or because I threw a paper cup out or I dropped my paper cup out the window. I don't throw it, but sometimes it does fall out when I've got hands full of toddlers. Like, I used to feel like God was like sitting there marking things down. No, God is compassionate. And God is so compassionate. But even though we mess up over and over again, starting with Adam and Eve, God forgives us. I feel like I should start dancing to that. Is that Coco's fun? Oh, I'm gonna have to tease Coco about that. We love you, Coco. You guys, Christy shared this most beautiful message on Easter, and I told her, and I'm going to be very upfront and honest with you all, I've never liked Easter. I used to really struggle because while I was dealing with a lot of my own personal trauma and stuff growing up, and then as a young adult, I struggled with this perfect picturesque day that celebrated death and celebrated torture and suffering and celebrated our own humans killing this incredible human being who came to earth to love us and show us how to love one another. Yes, I celebrate the resurrection, but I appreciated Christy's perspective so much because it wasn't a cliche Easter message that we hear so much. Jesus didn't just come to die. Jesus didn't come to die. Like, otherwise, I don't think that Jesus would have come as an infant. From the earliest part of his little life and birth, you see compassion in action. And Jesus was raised in a culture where he had to depend on the earth. And you don't see him cursing the land. And I mean, there were times he did when he was stuck in the wilderness. Like, I would have been upset too. But you see this individual, God incarnate, who loved people, who fed people, who cared for people, and doing so in the context of respect of the earth and what had been created. Care for the planet compassionately connects us to the generations that come after us. I'm going to say that again. When we care for the planet, it compassionately connects us to the generations that come after us. I can love you, and I can love you, and I can love you all day long, and those things matter. Every compassionate action we do towards that person matters, and sometimes our actions will change that person's life, and that change their children's life or the people's around them. Like, generational compassion is really cool. And a lot of the times you talk to people and people will say, this moment changed my life, and usually that involves another human being. And I can attest to that in my world, and my kids are better people because of other people that were in my world. In the same way, the people who came before me that took intention in caring for this planet made it better for me. And that's compassion. Amanda Gorman in that poem says this really beautiful line that says, caring for the earth in essence, and I can't remember it because I didn't write it down word for word, but it gives future generations the planet they deserve. I can't imagine walking outdoors and not being able to breathe because our air is so polluted. I can't imagine not being able to escape into the beautiful wildlife and forests and world and to go see the ocean. And not everybody sees the nature the way that I do, but I would invite you all to take a moment and think about what it is in the outdoor world. Is there something that brings you joy, brings you peace? Maybe it's the sunsets when you drive home after work. Maybe it's the little plant that sits on your desk that doesn't even need outdoor sunlight, but these green leaves we're in a relationship here. Maybe it's a pet that you have, or a bird that comes and visits your window every day, and one day that bird doesn't come and you miss him. We have a choice to hand this world off to the next generation better than we got it. Or we have a choice to stay in this cycle of abuse of this beautiful planet that God created. And I believe that the God that I know weeps over the neglect and the abuse. Yet God still cares about us. Like, how crazy of a relationship that we can do our part to not make this world better, and God still likes us. He still cares about us. They still care about us. If any of you are like to recycle materials in a recycling service, you see this cute little triangle. And every time I try to draw it, it looks more like this because it's so perfect. But I want you to imagine that little triangle, this word recycle. There's this cycle, right? That we use something and then we recycle it, so we turn it. We don't do much with it usually. Sometimes we do, but we usually send it off somewhere where then it becomes something else and it goes back into this world, and it's this beautiful cycle. Compassion is kind of like that when you think about it. When we love the earth, when we take care of the earth, it's one really cool way that we show God that we love God, right? And God cares about people, that compassion of God. And God's not dependent upon our compassion, but there's this beautiful picture of God in the middle, just caring about the earth and caring about people. And when we care about the earth, we show God we care about God. And we show people, generations to come in the world around us, that we care about people, right? And when we care about people, I don't know about you, but when people are compassionate to me, it typically inspires compassion in me. And when I am in a place that's really compassionate, I'm a lot more sensitive to the world and the earth around me. If you're ever around my daughter, my kids are definitely being raised in earth-friendly households, and my daughter will yell at me sometimes when I try to put the thing in the trash that's not that's recycle, Mom. Or she'll be like walking and be like, don't step on the clovers. And you're like, I don't know how else to walk, but I'm trying to protect the clovers and the wildflowers. And Mom, you just squished an ant. But I want to have that daring level of compassion. She also really thinks it's necessary to get the ants from in the house, outside the house, but in doing so typically ends their little tiny life cycle. But she still takes it outside, so it's the thought that counts. People and our earth are suffering because of climate change. And climate change it's kind of becoming our thumbprint on this world. And it's a really big world, and it's a very overwhelming conversation. And I would really like it if we could change that in one generation. But it's taking a lot, and there's a lot of movements, and I'm so celebratory of those movements, because it needs to overflow into the big factories and those things that are so much bigger than you and I. But here's my challenge to you all today, is that we can each do our part. And we can do our part no matter where we live, no matter how much money is in our pocket, no matter where we lay our head at night. Christy also gave me this word, and I really liked it, that compassion for the earth is a revival. And it's a revival that not only expands our perspective to be appreciative and in awe of the beautiful nature in the world around us, it also makes us really appreciative of people. It expands our compassion. And when we appreciate the world around us, typically the world around us shows us a little bit more about who God is. And that's really cool. It starts with the simple things like picking up trash, doing the 3 R's, recycle, reduce, and reuse. Woohoo! Little things like I'm so appreciative of our community here. It's why we use coffee mugs and glass mason jars, because we can wash those. It's things like anytime you use the OC or go thrift shopping and you recycle clothing, whatever else somebody else said, I don't need this anymore. When we choose to invest in that or to receive that, that is saving the earth. Like, how cool is that? Caring for the earth is not just for the privileged, and I'm really sick and tired sometimes of a marketing world that seems to make us think we have to spend more money to do it. Like, it doesn't have to be hard. The last little thing that I'm going to really dive into is this beautiful relationship we have with the earth, and that is the earth gives back when we put effort into it. When we go outside and we do our part to plant a tree, to email the factories that are polluting our skies and tell them about why we need to make things a little bit more eco-friendly, like when we do our part and we go take a deep breath of air, fresh air is one of the #1 things that helps us regulate our nervous systems. Like how cool, how accessible is that? That one of the most healing things for anxiety is simply fresh air in our lungs and our bodies. Soil has a lot of really cool chemicals in it, including nitrogen, and when we put our hands in soil and we dig and we grow things, it has healing properties to it. The earth is healing to us. Our senses are designed to be in awe of nature. When we go outside, and this is part of why I like to be barefoot, and you stand in the grass, our senses literally, it's another way we regulate our nervous systems. Being connected to the earth is one of the most easy and accessible ways that we regulate, that we calm down, that typically gets us ready to then face the world around us, to go to school board meetings, and I could say things, but I won't, to be able to show up to work when it's been a really, really hard day, to be able to parent toddlers and infants when they growl at us in the store and they're just acting like little crazy people that we love very much. It is so, this world, I hope that this message is just a reminder of how cool it is that we get to live here. How cool it is that we get to see this beauty and be part of the beautiful creation that God created. But also how profound a responsibility that God has given you and you and you and me to give back and to care for the earth. As we leave here today, and I'm going to kind of throw a little bit of a audible into my little wonderful worship team, but it's actually an easier one. So I really want us to just sing that "What a Wonderful World" again, because it's not a worship song, but heck, I think it's one of the most beautiful worship songs there is, because it's this beautiful exact example of just loving the earth and loving people. So if you're sitting close to somebody, maybe just enjoy the presence of someone close to you. Take a moment and just enjoy the space that we're in. And my challenge to you is find little ways this week to be intentional. And sometimes the little things we do to be intentional add up and become bigger things. And every little action matters. Just look at the tiny little wildflowers and the little honeybees that pollinate the flowers. It's pretty cool the way the world works. I'll have you guys come on up, and I just invite everybody to close your eyes. And just take some deep breaths. Oh, God. God, our creator, God, our healer. God, our relational, creative friend. You have made this beautiful world, and you did it with your voice. How complex and how creative and how beautiful. And then you created us. And you long for relationships with each and every single one of us. You care so much about us. You care for the grass that we stand on. You care for the little birds that fly over our heads. God, we are surrounded every single day by your radical compassion. May that just overflow and fill us. May it be in the breath that we breathe, and the words that we use, and the actions we do with our hands, the places we put our feet. May we be more intentional to fight for this planet than to care for it. May we be more intentional to care for one another, those who inhabit this planet, and call it home. Because no matter what you look like, no matter what you think, no matter what you say, you and I enjoy the same space together. And may that unite us. Oh God, you are good. You are compassionate. You are so creative. May we not forget that you gave those very same qualities to us. And that is really cool. In your name, amen.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking and saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Okay, we have one more song. You got it. Okay.
Good catch. That was good.
You give light, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out praise, pour out praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out praise to you only. You give light, you are love, you bring light to the
give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. All the earth will shout your praise, our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. All the earth will shout your praise, our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out praise to you only.
Well, we have Christy and Monty.
Hey, everybody. Okay, few announcements really quick. First of all, Holly, thank you for a fantastic message tonight. Okay, so a few announcements for you. This Wednesday is Park Day. So Holly and Mackenzie are going to be at Phelps Grove Park at 4 o'clock if you have little ones and want to come hang out and play, or if you just like little ones and want to come hang out and play, you are welcome to do that. Also, book club is going to start a new title in the month of May. We are going to read Wholehearted Faith by the late Rachel Held Evans. Rachel had one of the most beautiful theological hearts, and I just love this book she was writing at the time that she died. And Rachel was just a little over 30 when she passed away. And so her really good friend Jeff Cho finished that book for her. And it is just a phenomenal, beautiful book about faith and wrestling and deconstruction and all the things. So I invite you to grab a copy of it. If you need help grabbing a copy of it, let me know and I'm happy to order you a copy. Other thing I want to tell you is we are launching something new on Tuesday to help us continue to push Roots of Community and this crazy vision towards a reality. We are starting something called the Roots Task Team. And so we are going to meet every other Tuesday for about an hour on Zoom for anybody that wants to help just do the things that need to be done, to make phone calls, to plan fundraisers, to do those kind of things. So, and I'm going to totally pick on Scott because he wore this amazing new shirt that Holly designed. So come up here, you have to model. Walk the runway. Let's see you strut it. Come on. That's fantastic. For those of you on Facebook, you just totally missed out. Just saying. Okay, so Holly designed these cool new shirts called Humans First. Kind of this play on the idea of housing first. I'm a big believer. Housing first is one thing, but putting people and their humanity first is way more important. And yes, housing is a piece of that, but just dropping someone in a house and saying, see ya, good luck is not humanity. And so we are super excited about these. So you can order these on our website now. Is that? We will launch these shirts for you on Monday. Yes, they are not quite there yet, so you get a little tease. Scott is wearing it early, so he gets to be picked on tonight. So anyway, that's all that we have for you guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will not be here next week, so have fun without me. Sharita's going to be preaching. Holly and the worship team will be putting things together. I will not leave Bob in charge because he'll start like popping balloons and scaring people. So anyway. But I will miss you guys. I'm going to go spend a early Mother's Day weekend in Columbia with Bryson. So I will be back the following week and look forward to seeing you guys then. All right. Bye, everybody.